Next, we're going to move on to another session, looking and talking about, really introducing the Living with Glaucoma session here. We have a few great presenters here today, and I think Dr. Ahmad Aref. Oh, there we go. He's over here. A good friend of mine too. We've done some talks recently in the last few years, and a fantastic ophthalmologist and glaucoma specialist from the University of Illinois, Chicago here. And he's going to talk about an interesting topic: the role of diet and exercise in glaucoma. So, Ahmad.
Thank you very much, Paul, and the organizing committee. This is so wonderful. That last session I thought was great. I learned, myself from my colleagues, and thank you all for coming. I think this is so important. This topic is an important one. It's a little difficult to give solid recommendations and advice based on the studies that have been done on this topic. I'll tell you, as a glaucoma specialist, I'm a huge believer in this, in diet, exercise, other lifestyle changes that can really make a difference in terms of this disease, glaucoma, and of course in terms of general health, and I think the two go hand in hand. I know we had a fantastic talk earlier this morning about glaucoma, how glaucoma develops, what it is, and I'm not going to rehash all of that. But just one point I want to make is that glaucoma, the disease, is a balance. It's a balance between pressure inside of the eye, and it's a balance between blood flow flowing into the optic nerve and health of optic nerve blood flow. We have had tremendous advancements and treatments available in terms of lowering and treating intraocular pressure. It's amazing the tools that we have available today, whether it's medical therapy, lasers, surgery. We don't have such great tools to treat the other side of the equation, blood flow into the optic nerve. And I think that's where a lot of these lifestyle changes can have a really big impact. So I've divided this up, and I want to start with something that's near and dear to my heart. I start every single morning with a cup of coffee. My wife, my family, nobody wants to talk to me unless I've had my cup of coffee. So we'll go through this one first. And let's talk about some coffee basics, because a lot of the studies that have looked at coffee look at coffee in terms of caffeine content. And so a single, regular cup of coffee will have 150 milligrams of caffeine. A lot of us, including myself, frequent Starbucks, and our dosages of caffeine are based on Starbucks sizes. And if that's the case, a tall Starbucks coffee is 235 milligrams of caffeine. A grande is 310 milligrams of caffeine, and a venti is 410 milligrams. There have been many studies that have been performed on coffee, caffeine content, and effects on intraocular pressure and risk of developing glaucoma for one who does not have glaucoma. Most studies show that with a single cup of coffee, eye pressure does probably go up a little bit, on the order of 1 to 2 points of millimeter mercury. But that effect is very short term, maybe for an hour or two. And the mechanism by which that happens is still unclear. Really, a 1 to 2 millimeter mercury rise in eye pressure for an hour or two in the vast majority of people, I think, will make no difference in terms of their risk for glaucoma or in terms of their glaucomatous disease. And so if we're talking about a single cup of coffee, I think we're probably okay. A recent study out of the UK looked at coffee consumption in relation to risk of glaucoma, and they were able to very solidly pinpoint one's risk for glaucoma based on their genetics, based on blood work that could detect and predict one's risk for development of glaucoma. And it turns out that on the basis of these results, that one would have to be in the very highest risk category and drink more than 480 milligrams of caffeine per day. So, more than one of these venti Starbucks coffees per day, and be in the highest risk category for that to have any impact on eye pressure. And in fact, coffee may have some benefits. We know that more and more there seem to be studies that suggest coffee consumption, regular coffee consumption, may be associated with longevity, and there may be some antioxidant effects that we get from coffee. And so there actually may be some benefits to the optic nerve and for glaucoma. The bottom line here is that coffee consumption for the vast majority of individuals, whether or not you have glaucoma, will likely have no impact. If one is a very heavy coffee drinker, more than 500 milligrams per day, and that individual does not have glaucoma but has a very strong family history, maybe that person should consider cutting down on their coffee consumption. Or if an individual has glaucoma and their glaucoma has been getting worse despite eye pressures that seem to be controlled in the doctor's office, then perhaps that individual should consider cutting down as well. But for the majority of individuals, a cup or coffee a day, a cup or two of coffee per day will make no difference. The next section of this talk is really the one that I think has the potential for the most impact on one's disease process. And this has to do with flavonoids. Flavonoids are plant chemicals. They're photochemicals in plants and vegetables, fruits and vegetables, that give fruits and vegetables their beautiful, bright colors. And flavonoids are also in caffeinated hot tea as well as dark chocolates. And they've been shown to have antioxidant effects in the body. A large database study conducted a few years ago looked at flavonoids, in particular flavonoids that were derived from hot caffeinated tea. And it showed that there was a possible protective effect in terms of reducing the risk for one to develop glaucoma. Now, in individuals with glaucoma who've already suffered vision loss from the disease, there have been a number of studies looking at flavonoid consumption and the effects of flavonoid consumption on preservation of one's field of vision, and some studies suggesting that visual fields may be improved with flavonoid consumption. In a big study that took all of the results from other studies looking at this and put it all together and analyzed it independently, that effect was shown, all without any effects on eye pressure, suggesting that the positive effects that we get from flavonoid consumption are all related to these benefits on blood flow to the optic nerve. We'll switch gears to nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is now a component of a commercially available medication, and it's also found in our diets as well. Higher dietary intake of nitrates has been associated with a decreased risk of development of glaucoma in individuals at risk. Probably from some of the same effects that we see when nitric oxide is used commercially, which is that enhanced outflow mechanism in terms of fluid flowing out of the eye's natural drainage system. Some of the main sources of nitrates in our diets are, iceberg lettuce, celery, beets, sweet potatoes. These things may be of benefit, not as strong of evidence or studies that have been conducted on dietary nitrates, not as strong as what we see with flavonoids, but there may be some benefit. Lastly, we'll wrap this up with exercise, which of course is an important lifestyle consideration. And when we think about exercise as a whole, we want to categorize exercise. There are aerobic exercises that can be performed, resistance exercises, maybe with weights, and then yoga and breathing exercises. All of these are going to have different effects on eye pressure, different effects on modification of risk for glaucoma. Most studies suggest that aerobic exercise is a good thing for eye pressure and for glaucoma patients. In this study, looking at individuals that had jogged on a treadmill for 30 minutes, there was a reduction in eye pressure by about 2 points of millimeters mercury immediately after jogging. And that corresponded to increased they were able to image patients and show that the drainage canal of the eye was expanded and corresponded to these decreases in eye pressure. So at first it really wasn't clear what the mechanism was, but now with this study and others, it suggests that it's benefits in terms of fluid drainage out of the eye. Now that's in contrast to resistance exercises, heavy weightlifting. Heavy resistance exercises, especially during the peak weight loads, are associated with often dramatic increases in eye pressure. In this study, looking at patients doing heavy leg lifts, during the leg lift, eye pressure could go up all the way to 40, sometimes 70 millimeters mercury. And that was only for a few seconds before eye pressure gradually came down to baseline levels. Now, for a few seconds of eye pressure at a level of 40, 70 millimeters mercury may not make a difference for the majority of individuals, even for individuals with glaucoma, if they have earlier stages of glaucoma. But if somebody has an advanced stage of glaucoma, I would be careful about doing these heavy-duty resistance exercises, because we know that even if it's just a few seconds, having an eye pressure that high, I think, does put one at risk for vision loss that cannot be regained. With yoga, some yoga exercises involve relaxed breathing, and these breathing exercises have been shown to potentially be beneficial in terms of reduction in eye pressure, and likely related is a role in decreasing oxidative stress. But again, with some of our yoga exercises where the head is below the heart, there can actually be an increase in eye pressure. Not as much as what you get with the heavy-duty weight training, but there can be an increase in eye pressure with these head-down exercises. So again, something to be careful about if one has advanced glaucoma. Whenever I'm trying to incorporate a lifestyle change, I think about, well, how can I incorporate this into my daily habits? Some things to think about would be maybe starting off your morning with a single cup of coffee, maybe not overdoing it, and maybe some of these relaxed yoga breathing exercises or meditation may help. For lunch, maybe a healthy salad with some of those colorful fruits and vegetables that'll give you some of those flavonoids, maybe some dark chocolate to go with that, and then capping off your evening with maybe a nice bike ride. This sounds like a great day to me, and may also benefit for patients with glaucoma too. Thank you.
Moving forward, I want to invite Monica Ertel from the University of Colorado here, who's going to talk about alternative treatments and will it help me or you as a patient. So thank you, Monica.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation to participate. It's been really excellent being here, so I'm really grateful to be a part of it. So my name is Monica Ertel. I'm a glaucoma specialist at the University of Colorado, and I mainly practice at our satellite campus, which is located in Boulder. And so I have a lot of patients who use a lot of these alternative treatments, and so this is a great topic, and I'm eager to share some with you. So we'll start by talking about lifestyle modifications that can impact glaucoma, and then we'll talk about some alternative treatments that may have a role in glaucoma therapy. And I'd like to start with a caution. So everything that I'm going to speak about today, and in general when we talk about alternative treatments, they work best when used in conjunction with your conventional treatments like drops, lasers, and surgeries. Additionally, there are some types of alternative medicines that are not regulated. And so it's important that if you are interested in pursuing alternative medicines, and we know that about 1 in 3 glaucoma patients do seek alternative medication or alternative therapies for their glaucoma, that you do your homework and you are making sure that supplements are well manufactured and or that your practitioner is certified to provide you whatever therapy they're providing you. So first, I'm going to start with some simple things, some lifestyle modifications. Sleep. So we know that at nighttime when we're lying down flat, that intraocular pressure elevates. One of the things that we can do to help prevent this is raising the head of the bed. And so head of the bed elevation by 20 degrees has been shown to reduce eye pressure increases overnight. And it's tempting to put a couple extra pillows under your head and say, okay, now I'm elevated. But if anybody has done that, you know it can make your neck really uncomfortable. And also craning your neck forward or flexing your neck forward can actually increase your pressure. And so a better way to do it is to use one of these mattress wedges. They come in foam or air blow-up forms, and you can stick it underneath your mattress and elevate the head of your bed. Another option is using these little risers that you can put underneath your bed frame. I will tell you that some of my patients who use these risers say that they feel like they're kind of sliding out of their bed a little bit. Amazon makes little bolster pillows that you can put at the foot of your bed to help reduce that. We also know that sleeping on your side, whichever side of the head, whichever side is down towards the bed, that eye has an elevated pressure overnight. So I have some patients who come in with really different disease, a disease that's much more severe in one eye than the other. And so I'll often talk to them about whether or not they sleep on the side that has worse disease. If they do, I recommend that they try to sleep on their back. And it's really hard to do this. So some of the things that you can do is start sleeping on your back and put pillows on the side that you roll toward to help prevent you from rolling over. That's something that a couple of my patients have said has been helpful. Additionally, sleeping on your stomach can increase your eye pressure, and any pressure from the pillow or your hands while you're sleeping can also increase your eye pressure. And like we just heard, we know that pressure, of course, has a role in glaucoma, but also glaucoma is driven by high levels of inflammation, and we know that improving blood flow improves glaucoma. So things that you can do to modify, easy lifestyle modifications that reduce inflammation and improve blood flow are helpful. So things like stopping smoking, exercise, maintaining a healthy weight, all of these things are important. So a question I get a lot working in Colorado is what's the role of marijuana in glaucoma? So we know that one of the active components of marijuana, THC, has been shown to lower eye pressure, but that effect is very short-lived. It only lasts for a few hours. In addition, another compound that's present in marijuana, which is CBD oil, and a lot of my patients really enjoy taking CBD oils for other things, can actually increase eye pressure, and that's found in a lot of forms of marijuana. So because you have to take it really frequently and because of the side effects, most eye organizations have recommended against the use of marijuana in glaucoma. So I have patients who use marijuana recreationally, and I have some ground rules. So I ask them not to consume it right before their appointment with me because it can artificially lower eye pressure. So if you do find benefit from using THC, to use it at least 3 to 4 hours before coming to see me. I ask that it's ingested and not smoked because we know smoking can cause problems with inflammation. I also request that it's THC pure and that there is lower concentrations of CBD in it. And if a patient is using CBD oil, I'll either use an eye care home, which Caroline talked about and we've heard some about today, to see if it raises pressure, or have them take their CBD oil and then come and see me so that I can measure their eye pressure. So there are some other alternative treatments that are useful in glaucoma. There's this group of medicine. It's actually the oldest form of medicine. It's a traditional Indian medicine called Ayurvedic medicine. And the idea is that if you restore balance in the body, that you can reduce the risk of developing chronic diseases. The Ayurvedic medicine uses herbs like turmeric, roots, as well as some manipulations like yoga, acupuncture, massage, pinpoint therapy. There are some great studies that show that Ayurvedic therapy, when used in conjunction with traditional glaucoma therapies, pressure-lowering drops, has some benefit. However, there are a lot more studies of patients who take Ayurvedic compounds that have high levels of lead and mercury. So just ensure that if you are taking supplements, that they are well manufactured and that they are free of some of the heavy metals which can be used in Ayurvedic compounds. Additionally, some herbs that are used in Ayurvedic medicine, like turmeric. I love turmeric. I recommend it to my patients. A lot of my patients will use it regularly. I put it in my coffee every morning. But when taken in really high concentrations, can have negative effects. So it's important that if you're supplementing your diet with some of these anti-inflammatory herbs, that you're just doing it as part of your diet, and that you maybe avoid taking really, really high concentrations. Meditation, we know, is helpful for a number of diseases. So we know that patients who have chronic diseases like glaucoma have higher levels of stress and anxiety. And the cortisol, the hormones, the stress hormone cortisol, can actually raise pressure. So doing things that can reduce your level of stress are helpful. And yoga and meditation are some of those things. Meditation can help by reducing the stress hormones. Also, it lowers eye pressure, and it can improve oxygen levels in the brain and in the eye. And it also improves quality of life, and there's a lot to be said for that. And there are no harmful side effects to meditation. We already talked about yoga, but it has been shown to have benefit, and we talked about the idea of avoiding some of the inverted poses as they can increase eye pressure. And finally, I do have some patients who use acupuncture. There's not really great evidence on the use of acupuncture in glaucoma. What I tell my patients is that if it makes them feel really good and they feel like it's reducing their level of stress, that it may be important for them to continue to incorporate it into their treatment. But I can't say that it has a real benefit in lowering pressure or reducing the risk of glaucoma progression. So in summary, alternative treatments work best when they're used in conjunction with your drops, your lasers, or your surgeries that your doctor is providing. There are some simple lifestyle modifications like head of bed elevation, exercise, quitting smoking that can be helpful in glaucoma. Marijuana is not recommended as a treatment for glaucoma. And some of the alternative treatments like Ayurvedic medicine, yoga, and meditation may have benefit in the treatment of glaucoma, but again, just use caution. And I look forward to hearing your questions on the panel.
But I think before we get to the questions and answers, we have one more speaker, Dr. Michael Smith. Oh, there we go. From Chicago Lighthouse, which is a really important topic. We're going to talk about really the emotional aspects of glaucoma and having glaucoma. We talked a lot about that earlier with the patients and kind of how they go through that acceptance, et cetera. And so Doc is going to talk to us about the emotional aspects of glaucoma.
Good afternoon. Realize you guys have already had a pretty long day, correct? I was talking with some colleagues, and we were asked to present at this conference a couple of years ago. But of course, the pandemic occurred, right? So I would like to point out that anybody has seen me on any webinars recently. This is how I look with pants. So the intentionality of having to put my pants on today, I had to actually think about it when I was going to come and do this. My technology skills are, okay. So this is not news. My understanding there's both clients and also kind of care, family, friends that support in here, correct? This will not be news to you, but I'm a psychologist, right? So of course, the whole point of being a psychologist, you state the obvious. Adjustment to vision loss is hard. Everyone agree with that? Yes, yeah, it is tough. One of the things that make it tough is the emotions that are involved in having to deal with this. But one of the things I want you to take away from this, and I think Mr. Van Leer had mentioned this earlier, is that there's unpleasant emotions, obviously, right? Kind of anger, sadness, discouragement, kind of all those unpleasant emotions. But we cannot, and this is what I want you to remember, it's essential to also allow yourself to experience in the midst of this really cruddy time, the pleasant emotions. And so in some ways you have to be even more intentional about finding those pleasant emotions and letting them feel. It's easy for us to kind of go through life not experiencing in some ways, right? Oh, we're happy. The intentionality of allowing yourself to feel that, to balance at this moment all those really unpleasant emotions is essential, right? So I have 7 minutes left about. So at the end of this, we all should stand up and do our happy dance. Because there is a connection between what we feel, what we think, and how we act. That's pretty important to remember, right? So our happy dance helps us kind of feel particularly those pleasant emotions. And it's not always happy. Sometimes it's sad, or I'm sorry, sometimes it's calm, sometimes it's joyful, sometimes it's awe, right? So you cannot forget the unpleasant emotions and being intentional about experiencing them. And you have to find healthy ways to express all the emotions that go along with this, right? So healthy ways to express being sad, pretty obvious ones, right? A little tearful at times. You share it with people. You say out loud, I'm sad, right? You get to be mad, right? Don't do this, but I had a client talk about, I'm old, right? So one of the things they're talking about is this china, right? Everybody, remember way back in the olden days, you used to get good china, like for your wedding, et cetera, right? You had to pick out a place setting, right? So we were talking about our china, and I'm married, so we're talking about our china. No use for it all. No one wants it. Our kids don't want it. I don't know why it exists, right? So I had a client, we were talking about China, the plates, not the country. So we were talking about China, and she said, I know how to get rid of my china. When I'm mad, I'm going to start taking those plates and smashing them. Probably not the healthiest way overall, but the idea about ripping up old papers, kind of being angry, and the intentionality, remember the connection about how we think? That intentionality of saying, I'm getting rid of this anger. Right? It's the actual expression of that, right? So even when I talk about it, right, you're getting rid of it. So you need to get rid of it so you don't hold on to it. Lots and lots of clients that I've talked to with some kind of vision loss, right? They kind of don't want to feel angry, right? So they hold it, and then they hold it, and then they hold it some more, until finally, in unhealthy ways, it comes out, right? So the acknowledgement of how you feel is essential, along with the healthy expression, including the present one. I am going to pick on Mr. Van Leer again. I listened to his panel. Excellent job. Very nice. But he talked about acceptance. Use that word. Acceptance is a tricky word, people. Got to be a little careful. Acceptance is not an end goal, right? It's not, okay, I accept it, and everything is going to be good moving forward. That is not how this works. Your goal is to be healthy in the moment. Your goal is to accept this diagnosis of glaucoma enough so that you do all the things they're talking about. Change your lifestyle. Make sure you talk to your doctor. Make sure you do your eye drops correctly, et cetera. I think I see Laura in them. But they had this webinar, Laura and Dr. Shear at the Lighthouse, about how to put eye drops in. So I did want to mention that. So you can find it, I think, someplace on the web, because that's how this works. But it's an excellent webinar on how to literally put eye drops in, which is obviously essential. But there isn't an end goal. So this is an ongoing, continuous adjustment, right? And so you have to enter into it with that idea. Being able to ask for help. This is a task that all the clients have trouble with, because we are taught, right? Independent. I'm in charge, right? For me, particularly as a male, to ask for help is really, really hard, right? A key adjustment that you have to make is to be able to ask for help. Because this really is, you're kind of mourning the loss of shifting from independence to more dependence. Hard adjustment, right? I know, stay with me just for a second on this next one, because it's the weird point maybe. Asking for help is actually strength. So what I try to convince some of my clients of, it takes strength to ask for help, right? The other thing I try to convince them is, you're being so kind to the person that you're asking for help, because when I help somebody, how do you feel? You feel good, right? So I am giving the other person I'm asking for help that ability to feel good, right? They actually get to feel good about helping others. On another level, I just think it's important in our world, right? To be able to have people help others. so I'm having them practice that skill. I'm not saying that it's still not hard to ask for help, but sometimes if you keep that in mind, it helps a little. Relationships are impacted. You have to adjust to this. There's a concept called you're no longer in the well club, right? That diagnosis moves you from the well club to the not well club. That is a hard, hard place because you don't choose it, it chooses you. The reality is that your family and friends look at you differently. Particularly, there's always a small percentage of friends, maybe family, that don't handle this well. They just don't. But you got to remind yourself it's because of their personal stuff. Doesn't have to do with you, has to do with them. You know, they're fearful, it's a pretty fearful thing, reminded of their possibility of getting it, their mortality, etc. So, ultimate goal, focus on living healthy. That's across the board healthy. I'm going to feel better about drinking my coffee in the morning. Thank you very much. Not so good about my exercise level, but different point. Second thing is that engaged. Remember the connection between how you feel, how you think, and how you act? You have to stay engaged in life. And the best way to stay engaged in it is to find behaviors consistent with your values and meanings. I think the other person who was on the previous panel mentioned it shifts how you view the world. You can still engage in all kinds of meaningful activities consistent with your value. Last thing, I have a 4.5-year-old granddaughter. This is for everyone, including yourself and your family and friends. Discouragement is a big piece of this diagnosis. Your job is to be encouraged. That's as simple as saying to yourself or to others, good job. I have a 4.5-year-old granddaughter who the other day, because apparently I say good job to her quite a bit, did something and looked at me and said, Papa, good job. So I want you to get to that place where you're telling yourself and others are telling you, so it's so redundant that you know exactly what they're going to say. So the goal is to keep on telling yourself, good job. And I guess there's questions later. Look at that, 28 seconds.
I got a question from the audience for you right now. That was fantastic. The question from the audience, very well, thank you. That was really inspiring, so thank you for that. A lot of life lessons for all of us. The question from the audience was, how do we encourage, for this patient, how to encourage hope and faith and not let fear take over to accept, this idea of accepting your diagnosis or your disease?
Absolutely. Number one, being fearful is incredibly healthy and appropriate. So the job is to say, I'm never going to be fearful. The job is to acknowledge the fear, and then your task becomes to tap into being courageous, right? The whole idea is it takes courage. It takes courage to live, right? It certainly takes courage to deal with this diagnosis and vision loss, right? So your goal is to consistently tap into reminding yourself how courageous you are. I think, is that?
I think just, again, it kind of...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please.
I think it's essential to have hope, right? And so I encourage all the people that I see is that it is absolutely okay to have hope. Hope is always balanced against the reality of you need to be doing, and I think one of the doctors mentioned it, all the things that are routine, that is appropriate medical interventions that are recommended, you need to keep on doing those. But you can also look for others. You can also add the adjunct alternatives. That helps you have hope. You can also, in some cases, people have explored clinical trials, right? That's another piece. You can have hope. So hope should always be there, and you should always act responsibly and what's healthy for you. So.
Thank you for that. That was wonderful. So, getting back to, have a seat, please. We're a lot more questions, probably from me too as well. But Ahmad, you talked about, basically chocolate, and I'm a huge fan of sugar and chocolate, but dark chocolate I love. question is, how much dark chocolate do you need to eat, or can you eat? No, seriously, this is a question from the audience, not me, but I like the question a lot. So.
I actually think that's a great question. All of this, and we all hear this, everything in moderation. Okay, so just like with the coffee example, coffee's probably beneficial in moderation. But overconsumption of coffee can, lead to an unhealthy consequence. And I think the same, goes for the dark chocolate. Dark chocolate has unique flavonoids that cannot be found elsewhere, and probably, a piece or two of dark chocolate, a few times a week is probably okay. But overdoing it with the sugar and
the ice cream, and then the
exactly, and the
caramel on top of that.
Yeah, the add-ons,
Doesn't work.
is not going to be healthy. So.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Monica, there's a question for you on light and music therapy, which is also known as the harmonic egg therapy treatments. Do you know anything about that, or any knowledge on light and music therapy?
I've had one patient who's mentioned it to me, but I admittedly don't know much about the details of like music therapy.
Sure. For me, music is always a good thing. I don't know if you want to comment on music and light.
Yeah, well, music's excellent. I forgot, everyone was supposed to learn their victory dance, so we're going to have to videotape it and send it.
Yeah, I'll do a selfie with everyone dancing.
Sorry. Music.
Yeah, talk about music. That'd be great.
Oh, it's absolutely essential, right? So part of the goal always, right, is to, you have to allow yourself to express the unpleasant, but then you don't want to stay stuck, so you have to get to do things to feel slightly better. For many, many, many people, and particularly if you think about it, people with vision loss, right? Music is really helpful, right? So listen to music. Whatever your choice is, I always encourage people to try something new once in a while, right? Because our whole goal is that continued growth, right? So try a new kind of music, but certainly listen to music that you like. I could send you my plate. No.
There's a band called Funkadesi. I'll send you. It's a great band. You want to check it out? No, I'm just kidding. But no, it's been the way I survived medical school was through music.
Absolutely.
Actually, but a question, Monica, for you. You mentioned earlier be careful. There's a lot of great alternative treatments out there, even like vitamins that they sell online for blood flow and things like that. And what do you have to look for? You said be careful and do your research. What kind of research? What do you look for to protect yourself?
Yeah, I mean, ensuring that the compounds are manufactured correctly, which it's not always easy to do. I buy vitamins online too. And so if there's any question, you can ask the manufacturer of the vitamin to send a list of what's in that vitamin. I've had phone calls a couple times, patients who've come to me with new supplements that they're taking, where I've called the manufacturer and spoken to somebody about what's being made and how their manufacturing process is and what regulations they're following. So it's not always easy to find that information, and so that's one thing that you can do.
And you made a good point. You talk about excess. People think, vitamins are benign, so I can just take a lot. And just talk about re-emphasize the importance of not going overboard and excessive with vitamin C even or vitamin A. That can cause problems. So just talk about that in general.
Yeah, I think not just related with glaucoma or the eyes, but just for general health, there can be very serious consequences. To an overconsumption of something that especially is not going through the rigorous, FDA kind of approval process that our usual prescribed medications do. And so it's important just to take that into account with diet and of course with supplements.
Absolutely. Are there any vitamins that you guys had that you mentioned that you think are potentially better for blood flow, or anything else you've heard in the literature, like bilberry and ginkgo and other things? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, bilberry is one that has been shown to have benefit. So has melatonin. And again, it goes back to the idea that it's helpful with sleep, and so sleep is, of course, very good for us. Vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, again, used in correct quantities. Turmeric has shown to have some benefit as well. Turmeric's great because if you're using it as part of a diet, it's really hard to take high enough levels because of the low bioavailability. But all of these things that you should speak with your doctor about, because things like ginkgo can cause blood thinning. So if you are Potentially, omega-3 fatty acids is another one. So if you are using those supplements, those are ones that I ask my patients to stop if we are thinking about a surgical intervention.
So funny you talk about turmeric. It's haldi in Indian culture. A lot of Indian food has, my favorite food is gobi. Anyone had gobi? Oh, it's awesome. Has a lot of turmeric. And my grandmother used to say the reason she was 100 years old and still living was because she had a lot of turmeric.
It could be. Like I said, I put it in my coffee every morning.
Now. Last question, I think, for the sake of time here. There's a question from the audience. To do my job at work, I have to be in front of my computers 8 or 9 hours a day. My glaucoma is getting worse. Could the computer or the light in the computer, you hear about the light and kind of the blue light, et cetera, can any of those be an issue with glaucoma, staring at a computer screen? Anyone have to take that? Thoughts on that? There's not much research that shows that the light in front of your computer can cause your glaucoma to get worse. More likely the stress from your job is causing your glaucoma to get worse. But I do think we spend so much time in front of a computer that it reduces the amount of time that we're getting up and walking around and allowing for our bodies to move, which is what we're kind of built to do. And so the idea of taking breaks and walking around, that improves blood flow, reduces stress levels. Breathing exercises while you're sitting at your computer can do a lot of the same things. But those are just little tips that make that 8 or 9 hour in front of your computer day seem a little bit better for you than what it probably is now. Dr. Smith, I'd love to ask you a question, dovetailing off of Monica's comments. When we're on the computer and iPhones and staring, I know there's obviously decrease in blink reflex and dry eye and things like that. From a psychological perspective, do you see changes now in people's attitudes or perceptions because we're so focused on our phones and our computers?
Oh, absolutely. Again, showing my age, there's lots of more research not on glaucoma, but just on the impact on our psychological functioning, about the negative impacts of screens, really any kind of screens, right? And it becomes problematic because there's really quite a bit of research that we lose the ability to interact kind of in person, literally. That's a decreased skill. The problem is that skill of interacting with each other is probably one of the primary pieces that we've discovered in the pandemic, and also then people with vision loss, that really leads to kind of sadness and kind of anxiety, et cetera, is the lack of connection through communication, or communication that's person to person. It's not the same to do it, text or to email, right? So there is a detriment. There's all kinds of positives, of course, as we're doing this, right? But there is a detriment too. So yes, there is more and more kind of negative psychological impact found.
Well, this is a fantastic panel. Thank you to all of you for their fantastic presentations. All the presenters today want to thank you. Thank the Glaucoma Research Foundation and all of you out there as well.